You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. What is the difference between making decisions in fear mode versus almighty mode? Join me for today's insightful episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer. What if everything we've been told about holistic health, healing, and well-being is only part of the story? Because thriving in today's world looks different than it used to. Here, we challenge the narratives, rethink what it means to become human, and explore how that shapes the way we lead, live, and step into our full potential. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Many of us learned early on to hold it together and keep going, even when something inside shut down. Those early survival responses can follow us into adulthood, shaping our reactions, our relationships, and the way we deal with everyday pressures. Mary Sise, a licensed clinical social worker, is a leading voice in energy psychology and intuitive leadership. For over 25 years, she has helped high-achieving women calm inner noise, break free from self-doubt, and align their work with their deeper purpose. Blending neuroscience, tapping, and spiritual psychology, Mary teaches how to shift from survival mode to soul-guided action. As co-author of The Energy of Belief, she supports women and healers who are ready to step into visionary leadership and contribute to healing the planet. Let's meet Mary Sise. Hi, Mary. It's so great to have you back on the podcast. And wow, it's been a while, but I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you again. And I think we will be diving into energy psychology and many other interesting tidbits today. I'm so glad to have you back. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Petra. It's just a joy to be back here with you again. I love your energy. I love just even hanging out and chatting. So ask away. Let's have a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And same for me. I just love the energy that we share. And I think it comes across to our listeners as well. They can probably tell just by listening in. Mary, share a little bit about yourself and maybe the pieces of your story or your journey that feel connect to what you do today. And also share with our listeners what it is that you do today.
Okay, sure. I've been in the mental health field for I want to say 100 years. It just feels that long, but at least over 50 years since I been out of college. So in that field, in so many different domains, and learned so much from my clients. But what really moved me first, I was trained as a social worker, and then I began working with these clients that had fragmented, like they had trauma. And back in the 90s, there wasn't that much about trauma. We didn't know how to fix it. It's usually, we don't know what to do. Maybe we put them in the hospital. Maybe we give them meds. It's just, we didn't know. We didn't know the brain. We didn't really know much of anything. In fact, there was a time when they used to think therapists were making up memories for people. And obviously some people might still think that. Well, but we know more about memory and we know more about the body. But back then we knew nothing. And so much of it was just trial and error. And in terms of my own story, I would say that I thought I had a regular childhood like everybody else. But now that I know about trauma, I know about your brain, how it's mostly in a theta state as a little girl, and how we get programmed and how our beliefs are formed. And you think that's who you are. And you make up this whole persona about who you are. So I'm smart and I'm the second oldest of 12 kids. So I'm very bossy. I think I know more than everybody else, like really. And I'm just one of those people who grew up thinking, what's wrong with everybody else? Why don't you people think I think? And just some people might say confident. Other people, like, especially if you have to live with me, would say annoying and righteous. But like just this attitude of I've got my act together kind of way. So to be a therapist was pretty regular until it wasn't, until I really hit a wall. until one of the big, I would say, shakeups in my life. Much of it had to do with loss. When I was 7, I had a sister who died. And I got really programmed there because when my mother told me not to cry, not to upset, excuse me, let me say it this way. And that was really pivotal for me because when they told me that my baby sister had died, I was like 7 and I started to cry. And someone there, I don't know who exactly it was, but someone there said, "Don't upset your mother." And at that point, I fragmented and I didn't realize this. It was then I had to grow up really fast and never upset my mother and take care of the kids and do this and that because my mother was crying and I'd never seen her cry before. And by the way, God's taking kids. So, like, how safe are we here anyway? Like, the world was just not the world. And it was so suppressed. It wasn't until my 20s when I had a sister who died. She almost died in childbirth, but then she actually had some lung transplants, a couple of them, and then died when her children were young, 10 years old and 13. And it just blew over my world. Like, what's going on this planet? And that's really what moved me beyond just trauma therapy to what's happening. Maybe I'm not that, I got my act together so much. And this whole idea that we fragment in trauma as a child. I fragmented. Everybody fragments, and we have parts. That's really what got me into using the tools that I had built up, like tapping and energy psychology, with fragmented parts. I had to do the work myself to integrate myself. And it also got me into looking at the spiritual dimension of health and healing, because I was pretty functional, but yet there was this aspect of me that really didn't trust the universe, didn't trust God. There's a funny saying, "Make me an instrument of your peace," the St. Francis prayer. So my prayer is, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace in an advisory capacity." It's just this idea so that's really how I got into this. And I had to integrate and do my work to bring these softer aspects of me back, more heartfelt, more heart opening, and that it is safe to cry and be real. And so that's really where my work is today. I've been doing energy work for a long time, tapping, most people know it as, but it's really to work with where everyone got fragmented so that you can be more whole and in present time and bringing parts to present time. That's where it's at.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your part of that journey that you went through. And I have a feeling that there was quite a shift somewhere in going from just regular therapy and how you were supporting people in that capacity to that world opening up somehow. Now you do tapping, you do energy psychology. That is quite an opening, I feel, from just a regular talk therapy container that we would usually find ourselves in. So how did that shift happen? And where did that happen with you? You said you did some of that work that you had to do. But how did you start to figure out that this might be helpful for your clients as well?
Well, as I said, back in the 90s, when people would come to you with trauma, we didn't know anything. Intuitively, I knew that talking about trauma made people worse because the nightmares would get the worse. The flashbacks would happen more. Now they're more suicidal. And yet conventional thing was you got to talk about it and move. And I'm thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. So, I began to learn about one therapy that many people know about now, more, I would say EMDR, which is an eye movement therapy. And that thing really worked. And my clients were really getting better. Their panic attacks were stopping and the flashbacks were stopping. But there was still a segment of my clients that were so multiply traumatized that I was afraid to do it because they had to go home, they had to drive, I would bring too much in. And I heard about this tapping thing on meridians, like points on your face and points on your body, on the body and then eye movements. It had eye movements in it. when I learned it with Dr. Callahan. And I thought, I got to try it. And that was like a miracle, mostly because I could keep them in one trauma. When they went home, they could use it when they were stressed out. So they didn't need me. And for people who had a lot of trauma, we could take it piece by piece and they could still be stable. And then most of my work from that point, that was in the 90s and early 2000s. So most of my work from that point was really working and integrating it into the parts work to really help people come into present time.
That makes a lot of sense. And as someone who spent probably a decade in talk therapy, I can agree with you that it didn't really move much forward for me. And there was a component missing that felt like the healing just wasn't happening. The letting go, as you said, coming into the present moment just wasn't happening. So
yeah, it's really like parts are frozen in time. I often would use that word. And you can't reach them cognitively because they're frozen. I just created a program where we're talking about the title of the video is You Can't Make Me Cry. You can't make me, like mother's beating her or hitting her with a stick and she's just so frozen. And then that carries her whole life where she's shut down and she can't feel things well and she can't, similar to mine, and you just don't have the fullness of you. And I don't, you could have all the insight in the world as to why you're all screwed up, but it's not going to help you bring this part and regulate the part, get the system regulated so this part can now move forward and be here with you where it's safe. It's safe to cry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's really the next level, if you ask me, of where therapy should go. And we've all experienced trauma. Even something as common as a hurricane going through your town, or something that you experience, a car accident, or someone dies, or anything like that is coded as a shock in the brain. We know so much more about the brain and about the nervous system. That's why somatic type therapies are gaining such prevalence, especially in the trauma field.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think as we go through life, as you said, we each in our own ways pick up these shocks or these traumas or these stresses. And often it doesn't even have to be anything big that fragments us. It can also be something we just didn't understand as children or as young people, right? Where we're grappling with it and our brain thinks it's safer to fragment that part so that we can function and keep living. So it's fascinating of all the different things that we now know, especially when it comes to the brain and also trauma in that sense. How does tapping and energy psychology work differently than? I feel that if we tell our listeners, you just have to tap these things, there's a lot more to it than that. So how does tapping and energy psychology actually reach these pieces that we can't seem to reach when we are talking about them?
For one thing, the research is now coming in and it's merging more with polyvagal theory and some of that. So it works. I don't want to get too out there that you won't understand, but it is something about this body. The brain gets a shock. We'll start even with that. Let's just talk about the brain. The brain gets a shock. Something comes in, it shocks you. And then we always have heard of like a deer in headlights. It's like your brain gets frozen. And then, as I said, I love to think of it in terms of parts. It's like a part freezes. And then the other part of you has to get up and go to school or take some action, right? But there's a part back there. You can still hear the words. You can still feel the car accident. I'll give you a real good example. I once had this client. She was in a car accident and she was trapped in the car for a couple hours before the jaws of life took her out. And she was able to get home. Her mother actually was with her, but she wasn't hurting. They weren't really physically hurt in the accident. But for some reason, her body froze, and it froze for 6 months. They had to carry her down the stairs to go to the doctors. No medical examination could tell her what was wrong. She was just frozen. And so when I worked with her, I had to go back to the scene and we kept tapping the body and regulating we could say the vagus nerve. There's also physiological things going on in the brain, the amygdala, the limbic brain. We kept doing it until she could move through the trauma in her mind, keep taking the terror down, and then could see herself. She had actually split off. She could see herself watching herself That's how much dissociation can happen. And so it was the whole process I had to go through to do it. But the bottom line was the memory moved to the past. She knew she was safe. She knew she could talk. That part came to today. And as I'm working with her, she's actually calling me from her bed. We're on Zoom. And she said, I'm here. I'm really here. And I say, get up and walk. I've heard this somewhere else, but get up, pick up your mat and walk. And to her shock, she did. She got out of bed. She walked across the room. She went to her sister's room. Her sister thought she saw a ghost because she had not moved. And I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? It's something about the nervous system. It's something about the shock. It's something when you're just so flooded with chemicals and you don't know, you're in such a horror that you can't move forward. So like part of you goes forward, but not all of you. And it can show up in body things. It can show up in anxiety that doesn't belong here. It just, all these different symptoms. Sometimes people will say, I feel so empty inside. Something's missing. And what's missing is you. And part of her was still in the accident, frozen in time. Does that make sense? It's something along those lines. The scientists are going to have to figure that out. I've just had so many seeming miracles happen. To me, it's unethical not to do this work. Like when I can get you out of time and get you to today, and now you get your life back. And she could function again. Now she's back in college. She's doing her career. She's living her life again. That's what trauma does.
Yeah, and absolutely on every level that we get affected mentally, emotionally, physically, so many different things that happen. I find this really fascinating because, of course, I would consider tapping as a very non-invasive approach to helping somebody with their trauma. And there are a lot more invasive things that people have tried over the decades. We know that also. Tapping, I feel, actually very gentle, and working with tapping, many people say that it is very gentle for them as well as they're processing their traumas. Is this something that is generally safe for everybody to do or to come to a practitioner with? Or is this also something that they can do at home? You said sometimes they can do this between sessions. So what would that look like for somebody who wanted to integrate tapping into their own healing journey?
For me, best rule of thumb is if your body has been hurt in a trauma, so maybe you were beaten or there was an attack or you were in the war, okay, and your leg got blown up, okay? If there's any damage to the body, my rule of thumb is you do that with a therapist, somebody who's really trained, and get somebody who really has trauma-informed training and that really knows how to use this. And also, I would recommend somebody who does the eye movements with tapping, because there's over 40 versions of tapping. That's we could say dysfunctional family tree we got going, but everybody's got a different version and doing their own thing and calling it the same thing, whatever. So there is some confusion. I get that. But you want somebody who's also has trauma background. And if a trauma occurred under the age of 7, there's often more dissociation with it. Why? Because the brain can do it. Children have imaginary friends, right? We know that. You set the table for your 4-year-old's little friend who's sitting there that we can't see. But if a 15-year-old has an imaginary friend, they're down in the psych ward. The brain's not supposed to be able to do that. But under the age of 7, you can really fragment and create parts that are, especially if there's repeated trauma. So I really recommend you to get someone who knows what they're doing. They're really trained. They've got experience in that. Really take care of yourself. For other things, like it's a difference if this woman, she was in a car accident versus I saw a car accident. If it's something I've seen, a lot of times I can just do the tapping myself, or it's just something I'm anxious about, or you definitely can use this to really calm yourself down. And then sometimes a memory will come that links with it. So there's certain pieces, everybody should know tapping. Little children, they're getting bullied in school. My grandchildren, they see something on the news, their ears are perked up. There's so much instability right now. And parents, God bless you, because it is hard. And their little brains are getting programmed. And so really to invite sometimes my grandchildren will call me up, yeah, let's do some tapping, and I'll do tapping with them. And to me, for sports performance, you can use tapping for everything. Regulate your nervous system, quiet yourself down. And it's just so easy to tap in. We can go into this topic too, into your own intuition. Like right now on the planet, who knows who to believe? I watch a video, I'm thinking, is this an AI generated video? Is this really happening over in some other country? You don't even know anymore. So how do I quiet my nervous system down so I can tap into my soul? I can tap into my inner knowing, intuition. To me, it's critical. And we teach children so they're not fooled when something is saying to them, no, this isn't right. And we always get these signals from our soul, from our higher aspects of ourselves, from spirit, whatever you want to call it. How do I tap into that? And if you don't quiet your nervous system down, that's like a lot of static on the line and you cannot get it. Because intuition never comes in on the fear channel. I always say it comes in on AM, almighty mode, not FM, fear mode. You've got to get over to AM. And the tapping will do it fast. So for your intuition's sake, for all of that, so that you can really navigate and our children can navigate and heal all the trauma that's going on right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I love that. The AM and the FM. That's amazing. I absolutely love that. And I think you're bang on the money there that we actually should be teaching this already to young children so that they have tools that they can come to as the world may be a very stressful or a scary place for them, depending on where they're living, what they're experiencing, what they're exposed to in the media. So I feel this is a basic tool that we should already be teaching, be it in kindergarten or school. And because it is so easy to use, even children, they can pick this up so quickly because it's easy for them to do the tapping on the points. Once they remember those, they can just go for it. Absolutely. And surprisingly, tapping is not one of these recommended things that I hear a lot about, even though it is so powerful. So there is still also this desire to bring this more mainstream because it can really support people in their healing journey. So I'd love to have more conversations like this one to really showcase this versatility of tapping and just the support it can give. So I love if you are doing this with your clients, you're doing this with children. I love that you're bringing this into their worlds and giving them those tools that they can use as they go along.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I wish the whole world would be tapping. And it's funny, I've shared with you that when the pandemic happened, there was so many people freaking out. And I thought, how can I know this and not share it with the world? So I decided I would do something called Tapping Tuesday. And so it's every Tuesday at 2. That's the only way we could all remember what day it was and what time it was, 2 Eastern time. And so people come from all over the world. And they signed up for it. And there's thousands who have signed up for it. Mostly, they don't come every time. They just come when they're stressed out about something. And I can't stop myself. It's been 6 years. Some people have come every week. Some people just drop in. Nobody cares. And somebody will raise their hand and they'll go and I'll work with that person. And inevitably, it's everybody's issue that week, whether it's grief, whether it's anxiety about this or whatever it is. I never know what they're going to say. And we just all tap together. And research shows that if you do an hour of group tapping, it'll lower your cortisol level by 43%. So I'm thinking, hopefully we're all getting a slimmer waistline by that 43% and of cortisol lowering. But after an hour of being together and tapping, and you just leave there feeling so much better and so much more confident in your ability to do the tapping. And when you see what happens to the people, you can see their face change. You can see their body change. And they're more present and they're more here. And it's just so much fun. So really, I invite everybody who hears about, bring your friends. It doesn't matter. Just come on and check it out and learn how to do the tapping.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ripples into our lives on so many different levels. Because if we are not operating from this place where we are so flooded with stress hormones and we're living in fear, We make decisions differently. We approach our relationships differently. I think, even see things differently because our higher thinking brain becomes more capable, is not so hijacked by some of these other areas that respond to fear and threat. Everything, our whole outlook in the world changes actually when we become regulated, not to speak about even all of the physical benefits that come from being more regulated. To me, it's fascinating how many pieces of our lives are actually affected when we come into regulation, and has just such far-reaching consequences in our lives. If we just take, and it's an hour a week, right? It's not a huge commitment, but even that can make a huge difference in how we show up in our lives, how present we are, how we think, how we behave, how we feel. So there's massive benefits to doing this for yourself and investing that time in yourself to have those tools at your fingertips. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
there's nothing worse than feeling so out of control. This is who I am, or I'm just an angry person, or I'm just an anxious person. Or we were never told as children how powerful we are. Nobody said that to you. You're really powerful. You're powerful. For one, your soul, you're powerful. You can, and how to be in alignment. It's not like some cultures where they're taught to meditate or they're taught to quiet down. They're taught to go within. We've so trained ourselves to go outside of ourselves, which was great. Maybe when it was reliable outside of ourselves. I don't know when that was, but it's certainly not safe now. And so we have to train our brain to go within and to quiet it down and train our children that way. And let's see what happens. And maybe if we stop reacting like a bunch of 3-year-olds on this planet, sometimes we'll have a peaceful world, but there'll never be a peaceful world if we're not peaceful within ourselves. And world peace is going to begin with inner peace. So if each one of us does our part, and you can't help it, we have a brain that's wired for survival. Okay. It's just this big brain that reacts and tells you whether somebody's a threat or not, and it gets coded. But when you do the tapping, especially when you add those eye movements to it, you reprogram your brain. And all of a sudden, you're not reacting anymore. All of a sudden, you're here. And there's no threat. Or if there's a threat, believe me, your brain's going to fire, not an issue. But if your boss being angry is not going to come across and smack you upside the head like your father did, like we're in two realities. You have the power, everybody, to reprogram yourself, to quiet your nervous system down, to move into this alignment state. It's just nobody told you and nobody showed you. Again, that's why I really invite you to come on Tapping Tuesday. When you see people and all of us start to shift there, you'll get more confident. You'll be like, wow, this stuff does work. When you see video of how this works, that's why in a lot of the courses I teach, I show a lot of video. Because once you see it happen over and over again, you might not know how it happened. I'm not even sure how it happens. And 100 years from now, they may say it happened in a whole different way. But I know it works. I mean, people can now do something they couldn't do before. And actually, athletes are using it. So come on. And it's not a medicine. It doesn't cost you anything, really. You just use it. You'd be shocked. Now, the other thing I'll say about it is it's not mental. So you have to be in the energy or feel the energy. Think of it like a plug. You have to plug it into the wall to get the energy, okay? So you do have to feel a little bit, like you might feel some anger, but it's never mental. Energy work is not mental. So you have to feel the energy. And that's why sometimes that's another reason why you might want to do it with a therapist. If you're really scared of your anxiety that you're going to go into a panic attack, you want somebody else there with you to help you regulate, to help you bring it down so that doesn't happen. Or you're going to go into a rage and kill a few people. You want another person. There's still a lot you can do yourself.
Yeah. So the therapist can hold that container for you as you're working through separating that reaction from the event so that you can move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very interesting. And when was the last time, Mary, that you actually asked yourself, what do I actually want? Because this is one of the things that happens when we get fractured, like you explained, and when we experience trauma. we often have no idea what we want or need. We are completely disconnected from that. As you said, we look to this external validation of things that might be able to help us. And yet tapping will bring us back to this fundamental alignment and access to our own intuition, where we can actually start asking, what is it that would be good for me? What is it that would help me at this point? What is it I need or want? And in survival, those are not really things that we ask ourselves. There's no room. We're busy surviving the day to day. We're busy surviving our traumas. So I find that with tapping, it opens up a whole space also beyond that survival setting that we're in so many times, and allows us to come forward through that and find out who we actually are again. And how do we want to live this life? How do we want to show up in this world? Who do we want to be? And that's possible only when we actually come out of those traumas. And as you said, come back into the present moment. I feel tapping is so empowering for resetting all of that and bringing us back into thriving rather than just getting through the day, struggling and trying to keep our head above water. So very powerful approach to that. And Tapping Tuesdays sounds amazing. So listeners, sign up for the Tapping Tuesdays, Tuesday at 2. That's really simple to remember, 2 Eastern. So everybody can join Mary on the Tapping Tuesday. And Mary, you also have some exciting things coming up and part of the reason we are here today. So share with our listeners what it is that's coming up for you that's new and exciting.
What I'm really excited about is that I'm so passionate to create the next generation of trauma-informed energy psychologists, like really trauma-informed. Many people know how to do it for coaching, weight loss, this, that. But how do I do it in a really trauma-informed way? And as I said, I have so much experience working with trauma and dissociation and integration and many videos for that. So I was asked by the Psychotherapy Networker, PESI group, to create a course for them. And it's turned now into a certificate course for them. And it will be all trauma informed. Anyone who's a clinician, a therapist, coaches have to be careful, but they should know the information so that they don't go outside their scope and what to do if for some reason something comes up that. But to me, everybody, especially if you're working with people, I want people to have the best care possible, really. So your therapist isn't scared to go deep with you, right? That's why the therapist taps with you, keeps their nervous system quiet. How do I take a trauma-informed way of working? How do I evaluate? What do I look for? What do I do first before we go into doing the traumas? So we're not flooding anybody. So it's a real in-depth course that I'm offering with them, and it will begin in April. At some point in April, I think the middle of April is when it's going to launch. Yeah, so I'm thrilled, and I invite you to anyone who's working with others in this healing capacity that so that you're really well informed, and you can see how powerful it is. It's so easy for little things like sports performance or speaking engagement. Those things are easy. But when you can really heal and integrate parts in trauma work, it's amazing to watch people. Their whole life can change. Magic. It's magical. So that's what I'm excited about, and excited about sharing with everyone.
Amazing. Thanks for those resources. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Mary's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can join the Tapping Tuesdays, how you can access the course that's upcoming on PESI and the Psychotherapy Networker, I think it's called. So we will make sure once we have the link that we will send you there. And I feel these are great resources, whether you are a practitioner or you're a clinician, or you are just a regular person like I am looking for a way to integrate new tools into my healing journey. There's something there for everyone. So thank you for sharing those, Mary. And I feel that you've been doing this for a long time. So you, of course, have a lot of insight into the different challenges that people encounter and the different ways that you work with that. So I feel this program will be so valuable as well from that standpoint. You have so much wisdom to share.
Yeah, I just have so much experience, thousands and thousands of things that I know what not to do too. This didn't work.
Yes, that's important
My
too.
goal is the kind of guys don't have to make the mistakes I might have made, but yeah. And how do we integrate it? Because for me to bring this into the mental health field, how do you speak about it intelligently? And how do you bridge it into systems that it's and it's different. You're going to be tapping. We're going to move eyes. But when you see the results, they have to pay attention. And sometimes they'll tell you you're just distracting them. I love that one. But what I can tell you, if they can be in the next situation, the exact same situation, and not go into a freeze response or a panic response, then it's not distraction. It stays with the person. It's not just a distraction. It's not therapist suggestion or anything like that. It's really nervous system regulation and then present time awareness. Come watch the videos, come hang out. You'll get it. You'll get it.
Yeah.
And there is so much research now, hundreds of studies now. We at least have the research. I invite anybody to look. Main research place is ASAP, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. Its website is energypsych.org. And I'll put it in the thing for the most up-to-date research is all posted there. Yeah. So go there because it's not easy when you're breaking into a new field, into an established field. It's never easy.
Yeah. And yet it feels more of a return to ourselves, and it feels like something new because we are in essence working with ourselves as a whole person, as it should be, not just with pieces and bits and symptoms of ourselves. I feel tapping is a return to this person-centered approach that our healing can really benefit from on all levels and all dimensions. So I feel that we're not really taking this away to something really crazy, but we are bringing this back to where it should be. And that's about the entire person, about all the things that are happening. So I feel
these meridian points that we're tapping on, they were mapped thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
This isn't news. If anything, what we do is new age. It's not like new age weird stuff. This is thousands of years old, and each meridian point is mapped to a different tapping point that they've mapped out. For example, stomach meridian is under the eye. So if you just tap that point right under the eye, that will just quiet down that's your stomach meridian point. And then there's a heart meridian is more for anger. So there's different emotions. That was figured out thousands of years ago. It's different for us. It's not new age.
Yeah, absolutely. Ancient wisdom coming into our modern world. Yeah. Thank you, Mary, for joining me today and bringing your wisdom to this episode and sharing that with our listeners. I feel there are so many things they can tap into, tap into now and can use as resources. So I hope we see everybody on the Tapping Tuesdays. And thanks everybody for tuning in today. And Mary, thank you for this time, for spending this with us.
It's my great joy to be with you. And thank you everyone for listening. And I wish you the very best, very best.
Yeah, everyone take care and we will hear you next time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.